Hey, welcome to the next edition of the Connor and Heffernan Show. My name is Mark. My co-host Montana is right to my left. Um, Exciting episode. There's a lot of stuff to talk about going into this weekend of sports, as well as beyond. Super exciting. We're going to get things kicked off here with one of the biggest NFL games of the weekend. We've got the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Cowboys have been playing some really good football as of late. They've scored 40-plus points in 3 out of their last 4 games. Defense kind of looked a little suspect against Seattle. They look really good. And then as well as the Eagles, their last game last week, man, they got shellacked against the 49ers. And I don't know what to think about this Eagles team. Yeah, they're 10-2 right now. But I don't think it's hard pressed to say that they are not the best team in the NFL. I think that title right now could go to the Cowboys or the 49ers. What are your thoughts on this game going into it, man? Obviously, the winner of this game probably gets the upper hand to win this division. So take it away, man. What are your thoughts?
I mean, here's what I will say. We hate to gas the Cowboys up. If there's one thing we do not like to do on this show, it's gas the Cowboys up. But we can't deny it. Like you said, I mean, Dak's playing MVP caliber football. They're winning games. Their last loss came against the team that they're about to play. They have been on a run. The Cowboys have been on a tear. But I'm going to name some of those teams that they've been on a tear against. The Giants, the Panthers, the Commanders. The Seahawks is that one victory that I will say I commend them 100% for that, because the Seahawks, their record doesn't show it, but they are a threat in the NFC. Even though their record doesn't show it, they will compete every single game. But for me, even though the Cowboys have been playing mid-level teams, they have still been winning, and they have been winning not by 1 touchdown, not by 2 touchdown, but by a lot. They have been blowing these teams out and winning how a team of their caliber should win.
Should.
So I don't want to take anything away from them, because yes, they've been playing lower level teams, but they're still winning games. And that Seahawks victory really caps that off. But I have to give it to the Eagles because, like I said, that last loss came against the Eagles, and I think they're going to pick up that next one. Now, the Eagles are coming off of a terrible game, bro. That was just, I couldn't even, I turned that game on and I turned it right off. That was a rough one to watch because they did not look like a team that just played in the Super Bowl, that has one of the best records in the NFL. They looked like a terrible team. The 49ers dog walked that team.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not it was the entire game on both sides of the ball. They were getting dog walked, bro. So for me, it's like, yes, the Eagles are, in my personal opinion, the best NFC team, but they're coming off of a game where I'm not going to say they got exposed, but if they got beat by the 49ers and then by the Cowboys, we can say they got exposed. If the Eagles get beat back-to-back games by 2 of the teams that are trying to compete for that throne, then we can say they got exposed. And I don't think the Eagles are going to do that. I think they're going to show up. I think they're going to show up and show out. I'm going to have to take the Eagles because, yes, Cowboys are great, but they're still the Cowboys. 28-17, give me the Eagles. Cowboys, I'm not going to call them pretenders, but I still think the Eagles are more legit, and I think they're going to win 28-17.
Good pick. I'm gonna have to go with the reverse order on that prediction. I think the Cowboys will win by the same score, 28-17. Like I was alluding to, that last game for the Eagles, they looked absolutely terrible. And yeah, the Cowboys have been playing some pretty mediocre teams as of late, but they're doing what they should against those teams. They're showing how much of a talent gap there is between them and those teams. And I think that loss that the Cowboys took at the beginning of last month against the Eagles, I think that leaves a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth. I think the Cowboys come ready to play. And I don't think any of us mentioned it. The Cowboys are 6-0 at home. And this game is in Arlington. So, yeah, give me the Cowboys. I think Dak Prescott has another really good game. I think he throws for over 300 yards, and I say 3 touchdowns.
Wow, man. This is like night and day difference since the last time we talked about the Cowboys, we were not talking about them like that, but they weren't playing like this. Dak Prescott has leveled up his level of play, and so picking them to win is not a bad pick. It's not like we're talking about a team that barely beat the Panthers, barely beat the Commanders. We're talking about a team that really they're showing their skill, they're showing their talent. They have the talent on paper and they're showing it every Sunday and every month. They're doing what they need to do on the field. It's not just on paper talent, it is also on field talent that we're seeing. And Dak Prescott is playing like the MVP that they are paying him to be in Dallas. So shout out to the Cowboys, unfortunately.
Yeah. Dak Prescott, his numbers have been pretty impressive. He's 288 for 411, 3,234 yards passing, 26 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. Which, with that stat line, you're going to be winning a lot of games down the road. This is going to be an interesting game because I have a feeling this game is going to give one of these teams the leg up in being the division champ. But time will tell. There's still a few weeks left, and obviously we'll keep tabs on the Cowboys and the Eagles as the season goes forward. Let's move on to another pretty pivotal game, I think more so for one side. It's the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs coming off the loss to my boys, the Green Bay Packers, on Sunday night. What a game that was. Jordan Love is looking absolutely phenomenal right now. And kind of brought the Packers from the dead. But that's a topic for, a little later down the road here. But they're playing the Buffalo Bills in Kansas City. Buffalo Bills have been kind of iffy all year long. Their defense hasn't been good. Their offense at times has really not been good. The same can be said for the Kansas City Chiefs, too. The Chiefs' offense has been kind of lackluster at times. They, I think, still lead the NFL in dropped passes for wide receivers. They haven't been good at times. Their defense has been good. It's been serviceable, but they haven't been good when they needed it. Going back to last week against the Packers, they didn't make the key stops that they needed to. But yeah, I think this is a game the Buffalo Bills need to get if they want to stay within playoff range, because right now they're sitting at 500. This is a team that I think they made the AFC title game last year. And now they're sitting at 6-6. I think they're on the outside looking in on the playoff picture. What's your take on this game? Do you think the Buffalo Bills, against an otherwise stagnant Kansas City Chiefs team, do you think the Bills have what it takes to take down Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City?
I think they have to. I think this is going to either be the Bills turning their season around and turning their organization around, led by Josh Allen, or I think we're going to see the end of this Josh Allen-led Bills. And the reason I say that is not because I think Josh Allen is going anywhere, but I think we're going to see Diggs leave. I think we are going to start seeing some of those heavy hitters in Buffalo leaving if they cannot turn it around. And this is the game they have to win. They have to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. Is that because they're going to get eliminated statistically? No, they're not going to get eliminated statistically because somehow, last I checked, the New England Patriots still have like a 1% chance. So this team is probably okay if they drop this game playoff hope wise, but I think this will signify the beginning of the end for this team under Josh Allen if they lose, and I do not think they're going to. I think that the Bills, they're coming off of, I believe they had a nice bye week. If I'm correct, I think they had a nice bye week.
Yeah.
Coming off of a bye week. everyone's healthy, everyone's rested, everyone's ready to go. And then looking over at the Chiefs side, some of their pieces, some key, some not as key, are currently on the injury reserve list. So there are some pieces out. Pacheco's out. There's some pieces out for Kansas. And even without that, I think this Bills team is going to show up. And I've got the Bills winning this game on a late field goal, 24-21, taking down the Chiefs, and then that would boost them up to a 7-6 record and keep their playoff hopes alive.
I like that pick a lot. And you're going off of the injury report. Yeah, Pacheco is questionable for this week. You got Nick Bolton, one of their linebackers, who's on the IR, injured reserve. You got Drew Tranquil, who is arguably their best linebacker and signal caller on that defense, who's questionable this week. He got knocked out against the Packers last week. So did Pacheco. And then Brian Cook, one of their safeties, is questionable as well. I think without Kansas City having their signal caller on defense, I think Josh Allen is going to have one of his better games of the year. Give me the Buffalo Bills 27-17. I think Josh Allen will light up this Kansas City Chiefs defense a little bit and keep them in reach of a playoff spot, potentially a wild card spot. Let's transition over to the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers are coming off one of their best games of the year against the Eagles. And then the Seahawks, they've been right there with a lot of these teams. They're sitting at 6-6 that are sitting currently, I believe, on the bubble of the playoffs. Gonna be an interesting game, man. What are your takes on this one?
I mean, here's the thing. The Seahawks are not a bad team. The thing that we have to remember about the Seahawks, they're a Super Bowl winning team. They're a competitive team that's been in the playoffs year in and year out in the last 10 years. They are not a bad team. They've stayed relevant. But what I do have to say about the Seahawks is they have the unfortunate fate of going up against the best team in the NFC, because the 49ers have proved that they're the best team in the NFC. Is that regular season and playoffs? No, it is just regular season. But they are absolutely the best team in the NFC, and I think that they are going to beat the Seahawks. I'm not going to say with ease, because I do think it's going to be a game that is closer than what the score shows. I think the Seahawks are going to compete and try to show up, but I just think the 49ers are going to overwhelm them like they have been overwhelming so many other opponents that they've faced. And you've got to remember, the 49ers are coming off of a major win over the Eagles, a team that is far better than the Seahawks. And I mean, this 49ers team has a lot of momentum building up, and I feel like that's going to continue. So I think the 49ers will win. We're going to see a masterclass showing from their offensive players. We're going to see that defense show up. Give me the 49ers 35-14, winning by a couple of scores. But again, the Seahawks are going to compete like they always do, and the score is not going to show how close the game actually is competitive-wise.
I'm going to go a different route here, man. I'm going with the Seahawks pulling the upset, 27-24.
Ooh, is that the biggest upset of the season?
I don't think it'll be the biggest one, but it's going to be one of the bigger ones going, this late in the season, because it plays a pivotal role for the playoffs for sure. The 49ers need this one for seeding. The Seahawks need this one to potentially get in. So I'm going with the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to be ready to play.
I like that.
Who's
the difference maker? Who's the difference maker for the Seahawks? That's the real question. Who do you think is going to be the player that shows up and makes it, especially on the offensive side? Because that's what they really need. If we're talking about an upset, who do you think is going to be that difference maker?
Currently, he is on the injury report, but he's questionable this week. If he comes out and plays, I really like Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker, he's a really good running back. And then as well as Geno Smith, if Geno Smith comes out and plays, because he's currently questionable as well, I think both of those players can make enough plays to keep them within striking distance of beating this 49ers team.
I mean, I like that, and I love an upset. If there's one thing I love in sports, it's a good upset. Unless it's one of our teams that loses the upset, that's not so much fun. But watching an upset is exciting, and that would be an upset. That would be maybe not the biggest of the season, but at this point in the year, that could be a huge momentum shifter for both of these teams. So it would be huge. As much as I think the 49ers are going to pull it off by a decently large margin, I can also see your prediction coming true as well, because this Seahawks team, especially if those key pieces are active and ready to go, they're a scary team. Like we both have talked about, that Seahawks team, I don't think their record truly shows how good of a team they are.
Yeah, they're very, very, very sneaky. If they get a couple of these key pieces back, they're going to be right there. They've been right there with all these teams all season long. They just haven't been able to pull it off as much as they probably would like to. So yeah, I think if there is a game that they could use those pieces, I think it's this one. Because the 49ers are great. There's no denying that at all. But they have shown weakness at times this year. If the Seahawks can exploit those weaknesses, excuse me, they will be in a good spot. And that's why I am picking them, especially if they can get those players back and they play. The Seahawks are my pick to get it done. It'll be an interesting game for sure. Obviously, we'll talk more on both of these teams as well as we get down the road to the playoffs, because we're getting really close to playoff football in the NFL. And our next topic is, many teams are really still in the thick of things for the AFC and NFC in terms of playoff positioning. Those teams, that are still, kind of on the outside. Chargers, the Raiders, Bengals, Bills, Broncos, Seahawks, Rams. Who would have thought the Broncos would be in this position to being a team with an outside chance of making the playoffs, especially how they started the season? They started the season so poor, and now they are playing some really good football. And then, the Raiders have been right there. The Bengals are a bubble team right now. The Seahawks, Rams, we just alluded to the Seahawks. What are your takes? Do you think any of those teams will make the playoffs at the end of the year? Do you think there's a chance that all of them get left out?
So, I mean, here's the thing. It's tough because there's a lot of teams that are still in the hunt. I think that we've had seasons where we've seen lots of teams that are still in the hunt by this point. But I don't know. For me, it seems like there's a lot more teams that are still in the hunt this season. And I will say there's several teams that I would eliminate right off the bat. The Broncos, in my personal opinion, have too tough of a schedule to win enough games to make the playoffs. It pains me in my heart to say this, but same with the Raiders. I don't think they have an easy enough schedule to pull it off and win enough games in a row, especially because I like their coach, I like their situation, but it's just, I don't think it's going to be enough to pull it off. So when we're talking AFC, the Bengals are a team that I think will really have a shot. Same with the Bills. The Bills have a little bit of a trickier schedule than the Bengals for the rest of the season, but I do think if there's two teams that are currently on the outside looking in, the Bills and the Bengals are the only teams that are really looking like that. But then another team that is right on the outside right now is the Texans, but I don't even consider this team that's on the outside looking in, because this team has, in my personal opinion, the easiest schedule out of all of these teams, and I think they're a lock. So I don't think they'll be on the outside much longer. But two teams that are definitely on the outside that need to make some moves are the Bengals and the Bills, and I think they will. Looking at the NFC, two teams that have no reason not to make a push are the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Saints. Those two teams have the easiest schedules remaining. The Rams are not going to make it. I just don't think they are. The Seahawks are not going to make it. I truly don't think they will, especially if my prediction comes true and they lose to the 49ers. I think that will be the beginning of the end for this season. So the only two teams in the NFC that I can see making it in are the Bucks or the Saints. And if I'm picking a team between the two, I'm probably going to go with the Bucks. I do think the Bucks are a little bit of a more solid team, and I think they have a little bit of an easier schedule for the remainder of the season. So give me the Bucks being my team that I think is going to make it into the playoffs from the NFC, and then on the AFC side, give me the Bengals. Give me Bengals on the AFC, Bucks on the NFC for teams on the outside looking in. And then, like I said, Texans are currently, when I looked at the last standings, are on the outside, but they're right there on my list. They're like right on the outside.
On ESPN, the Texans are currently holding the 7 seed, which would be the wild card.
So they are in. Okay. Last I checked, they were right on the outside, or maybe they were tied with another team with the same record. But either way, they're a team that I don't think is going to have an issue. So when we talk about teams that are on the outside needing to get in, it's definitely Bengals, Bills, and between those two teams, I've got to give it to the Bengals.
I like all your picks. I'm going to go with two teams here in the AFC. I'm going to go with the Bengals and the Bengals and the Broncos. I think the Broncos have kind of stepped up their level of play. The Steelers losing ahead of them is obviously huge because that's the 8th spot right there. And if they were to win this weekend, the Broncos leapfrog the Steelers, and they're right there with the Texans. And if the Texans lose, there is a tie for the 7th spot right there. And then the Bengals they're kind of in the same boat. They're a game out from being a 7th seed. So just looking at the schedules and stuff, I think the Broncos could potentially get it done just based on the way they've been playing as of late. And I think the Bengals, if they can find a way to get Joe Burrow back healthy, I think they'll be put in a good spot too. As far as the NFC goes, currently they're in a playoff spot, but my boys, the Green Bay Packers, have been playing really good football as of late. Really good football. They have one of the toughest strength of schedules in the NFL. And they're still in this spot with a new quarterback, which is kind of crazy. They're currently holding the 7th seed. They're just over the Los Angeles Rams and the Seahawks. And then I'm going to go with the Seahawks for my team on the outside looking in. I think they'll be right there throughout the year, but I don't think they're going to be able to get over that hump. I think they're going to still stick on the outside looking in going into next year.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Those are good picks. I definitely think so. You said Broncos. Who do you have being knocked out then that's currently still in from that 7? Who do you have the Broncos not? Do you have it being the Texans? Do you think the Texans are getting knocked out?
I think the Texans and the Colts have potential to get knocked out.
Oh, wow. Okay. Man. Okay. I'm with you on Colts. I'm with you on and Texans, I guess, but Broncos, man. I mean,
they're right there, man.
They are, and they've been playing. I mean, we've trashed them so many times, talked bad of them so many times. We've got to give them some credit on this show because Russell Wilson is balling. He is playing really, really good football, and you can't really criticize them like you could even just a month or two ago. Like they've really turned the ship around in a lot of ways. And this Broncos, maybe they get it. I mean, honestly, I can definitely see them sneaking in potentially. Unfortunately, when we're talking about teams in the NFC getting bumped out, I know I said that I had the Bucks getting in. I do think it's going to be either the Packers or the Vikings. Between those two teams, I'm going to go with it being the Vikings that gets knocked out. They got my boys next, the Raiders. I think the Raiders can absolutely beat the Vikings. So I think the Bucks are going to knock out the Vikings and the Packers. I think the Packers are going to move up to that 6th seed. I'm pulling for your boys to keep that. And they got the Giants 4-8 come on, bro. That's a W for anybody.
The way the Packers are playing right now, the way Jordan Love is playing right now, they're playing some really good football. Jordan Love is playing. I'm not going to say he's going to win MVP because he's not. But as of late, if you were to just say MVP of the last 4 games, I would maybe put Jordan Love up there within that list because in 3 out of his last 4 games, he's had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he's thrown for over 300 yards. Like he's looked really good. He is balling out, and you can see the confidence that is starting to build within him. And at this point in the season, another crazy stat, he has better stats than Aaron Rodgers did in his first year currently.
That's crazy.
So you're seeing what the Packers want to see from a quarterback like Jordan Love because there's a lot of people that wrote him off. They're like, oh, Jordan Love, Utah State. Why would you waste a pick? People forget he was really good at Utah State. So he's a really good quarterback. He just needed a little bit of time to build up his confidence enough. And now he's got his team within striking distance of being in the playoffs. They could potentially get the 6th seed from the Vikings. It's crazy, man. Playoff season is really starting to pick up for the NFL, and I couldn't be more excited because there are more teams in the hunt now than I think I've seen in quite a while. But yeah, we'll talk more about the NFL in our episodes coming up. Let's transition over to college football. Biggest storyline in college football. Undefeated conference champ Florida State was bumped out of the playoff. And you want to hear the excuse that the playoff committee gave to keep them out was because Florida State was down to their 3rd string quarterback. That's no excuse. A team is much more than a quarterback. Yes, having a good quarterback helps, but that Florida State team has a roster that'll compete with any of the top 4 in the country. So the fact that they were left out is absolutely damn terrible. And you got Alabama, who just barely skated through the season. They almost lost to South Florida earlier in the year. They needed a last-second miracle on 4th down to beat Auburn. Like, they skated through by the skin of their teeth. And then they obviously whooped up on Georgia. But I'm like, they should not have been in. And in my opinion, Alabama should have been number 5. Florida State should have been given that chance since they were 13-0. Florida State beat a very stingy Louisville team in the ACC championship game. I don't know, man. What are your takes on Florida State getting left out? Because they were cheated, in my honest opinion.
They were absolutely cheated because you don't see the fact that we see 2 teams that have a loss in the playoffs, that's totally fine. We've seen that before. It's not a huge deal that not every single team is undefeated, but the fact that we have a team that is right on the outside looking in that is undefeated, and they won their conference championship game, and they stayed consistent the whole season and had some extremely difficult matchups that they consistently won. And what makes me the most mad is one of the excuses that I have heard that is being made is something that was being taken into account was the major injury to one of their key players being a huge reason that they were left out. Whether there's any level of truth to that or not, that should not – it's a team game. They have an entire team that was winning them games. It was not just one player. Are you going to miss that star athlete, that star player that's helping you win? Absolutely. But it was the entire team that was putting those amazing performances together, and it just feels like they were all robbed of that now.
It's ridiculous, right? Because they lost their quarterback 4 weeks ago to a terrible knee injury, yet they still found a way to win the damn ACC.
Stayed undefeated and won the ACC.
They're a damn good team, and now they're getting a chance to play up against a Georgia team who got absolutely shellacked against Alabama in the SEC championship game. In my honest opinion, if Florida State wins against Georgia, they should just claim a national championship.
Facts. No, seriously, they better get their hats ready now, because I think they're going to be beating Georgia. I think they're going to show up for that, which we'll talk about those bowl games in a little bit. But no, get those championship, get that gear ready, bro, because they've earned it if they win that. The only undefeated team we've seen teams get left out before, but we've not seen teams of this caliber get left out before.
It's reasons like this that they're going to a 12-team playoff next year.
Exactly. Which, thank God. I mean, that's great. This just drives the fact that we need that even more.
Absolutely. And it gives more teams in that top 10 to 12. There are a lot of teams, and we'll go into some of those teams here in just a little bit. Some of those teams have the capability to compete at the highest level with the likes of Michigan, Washington, Oregon, like all of those teams. So the fact that they are going to a 12-team playoff is definitely much needed to kind of avoid situations like this, because it's terrible. And I feel bad. Like, if we have any Florida State listeners right now, I feel bad. Coming from a Husker fan, I feel bad that you guys got left out because of a third string or being down to your third string quarterback. Kind of goes into my next thought. Back in the 1990s, when Nebraska was running through their schedule, there was a season where both Brooke Berringer and Tommy Frazier was hurt, so they were down to their third string quarterback. That didn't affect a damn thing. They still went on to win the national championship that year. So, yeah, it absolutely terrible by the playoff committee. They should feel ashamed. I'm not going to knock the playoff games because I think they're all going to be really good in their own ways. But Florida State deserved a shot to potentially win a national championship this year. Speaking of playoff predictions, Michigan-Alabama, maybe the most interesting matchup that we have seen this season. Alabama is obviously playing really good football, and Michigan is coming off a really good performance in the Big Ten Championship, as well as against Ohio State a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to lead this off with a prediction here. I think Michigan will beat Alabama 27-20. I think it's going to be a little lower scoring. I think because Alabama at times has shown weakness on defense. So I think Michigan has enough firepower to put up just more points than them. So give me Michigan 27-20. What's your take on this Michigan-Alabama matchup?
First of all, I love the matchup. As much as it makes sense that some people might be a little ticked off that Alabama went from being like 8 to bumping back down to the playoffs and kind of, obviously picking up that loss against Texas and having some pretty ugly wins early in the season. But shout out to Michigan versus Alabama, because that's going to be an exciting game. And one thing we are not going to see is one team blow the other team out. I cannot see a scenario where we see that. This is going to be a back and forth game. This is going to be a team where Michigan is trying to defend what they're doing. They're trying to keep this train going. But Alabama, in my personal opinion, just has a little bit more. And the momentum that they have picked up in the second half of their season, topping that off with a win over Georgia, because that was the big one. Beating Georgia, that was their prove it game. As much as they played LSU, they've had so many games that have been prove it games. That Tennessee game, because they very well could have lost against Tennessee and that their season would have been done. But they beat Tennessee, they beat LSU, and then they topped it off with that win in the championship game over Georgia. And so for me, I just have to give it to Alabama, because I just think you have Saban, you have a guy that knows how to get it done, and you have a team that is hungry to be back on top. So I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be an exciting game. Give me Alabama winning on a late touchdown, 28-21. I only have it being separated by a score. And like I said, and like I think you also agree, this is going to be a back and forth dogfight the whole game of two top tier teams, bro. I mean, these are the best of the best up here.
Yeah, it's going to be a super good game. But I think Michigan, after last year getting knocked out against TCU, I think Michigan has a feeling of unfinished business. And I think they're going to come out ready to play against Saban. It's hard to bet up against Saban in these circumstances, but I do think Michigan's going to come out with a little added energy. I think they might force a couple of turnovers. And Alabama at times has been very undisciplined with penalties. So I'm just going to go with the team with the more discipline, and that would be Michigan. Because throughout the year, they've been one of the least penalized teams in the country. They don't turn the ball over very much, if at all. So that's why I'm giving Michigan the edge, 27-20. Our next playoff matchup, it's going to be another phenomenal game in the Sugar Bowl. Got the Texas Longhorns making their first ever college football playoff appearance against Washington, who has been in the playoff now twice. Interesting game, man. I think we might see a Texas-Michigan national championship. What do you think?
Now, you know what, bro? I'm really glad that we picked like the exact opposite. So that's good. One of us is probably going to be right here. So that's a good thing, because I've got to give it to Washington, bro. For me, Washington is more battle tested than Texas. Texas obviously beat Alabama. They beat Alabama early in the season. You gotta kind of look away from September games sometimes, because sometimes teams can drop a game in September and they would not drop that same game later in the season. So I think it's going to be, if Texas did match up against Alabama, I don't think there's any way they would beat them again. But I think Washington beats Texas. Washington is battle tested, and they have shown that by beating Oregon. Oregon, in my personal opinion, has, if not the most offensive talent, one of the top 10 offensive schools in the NCAA, without a doubt. And that quarterback, Bo Nix, is absolutely electric, and that team is absolutely insane. That offense is incredible.
Michael Penix.
Michael Penix?
Yeah, Michael Penix is Washington's.
Oh, I'm talking about Oregon, Bo Nix.
Yeah, you just talked Bo Nix. Oh, were you talking about Oregon?
Yeah, I was talking about how they beat Oregon.
Oh.
My bad. I was like, did I just have a stroke? Am I like, did I just have a stroke? What's going on? No.
My bad.
No, yeah. No, my bad, man. Yeah, they beat Oregon, a team that, in my personal opinion, with Bo Nix, has the best, if not one of the best, the best. That's funny. No, but anyways, Washington, though, beating Oregon, especially in the championship game in the conference, that for me is what makes the difference. And so Washington, Texas, I hate Texas. Maybe it's also I'm a Husker fan and I don't want Texas to win anything. Maybe that's also what it is, bro. But I think Washington pulls it off. Give me Washington. It's gonna be a close game until the fourth, and then give me Washington pulling ahead and winning 35-24.
I've got Texas here. As much as I hate to say it, I apologize for my blunder earlier. It feels like I had a stroke. But it's cool that we can laugh about it. But yeah, I'm going Texas here. I think it's going to be a very, very high scoring game. Both offenses can put up a lot of points. Give me Texas 55-48.
Ooh, man, you got a high score. Ooh, that's gonna be a shootout,
I
bro.
think it's going to be an all-out shootout because both of these teams have shown that they can put up a lot of points against their respective competition. We've been accustomed to seeing at least one very high-scoring college football playoff matchup. Last year was no exception with Michigan TCU. That game was extremely high scoring as well, and I think it was a 55-48 game if I
Yeah,
remember correctly.
it was a shootout
It
till the
was an
very end.
absolute shootout. And I think both of these teams here have better offensive talent than I think Michigan and Alabama. And that may sound like a hot take, but I think both of these teams right here will put up points against the best of them. But yeah, give me Texas with the edge, 55-48. I think Quinn Ewers coming back from injury and playing as well as he has, I think that's going to be huge. I'm not going to knock Michael Penix. Michael Penix has obviously been awesome this year. He will very well win the Heisman when the Heisman Trophy ceremony comes out. So yeah, I got Texas winning 55-48. Let's see here. Let's
So that means
transition. Oh,
you've got Texas and Michigan for the championship.
I've got Texas, Michigan in the championship, and I do have Michigan beating Texas in the national championship.
Okay, and then obviously, I mean, I've got Bama and Washington, and I think that if it did turn into Alabama Washington, give Saban the trophy right now. I'm sorry, I just as good as Washington is, I think Alabama is a step up. So give me 42-28 Alabama.
Man, if Washington plays Alabama, that has the potential to be another really high-scoring game.
You think Washington scores more than the 28 that I predict? You think it'd be like?
I think so.
Ooh, okay, man. Hey, I'm here for it. High-scoring football games, unless it's one team scoring and it's not the Huskers that are doing it, I'm here for it. If both teams are scoring high, I'm there, bro.
This is not going to be a matchup like Oregon Portland State where Oregon puts up 81 points.
Definitely.
But I'm going to give you a prediction both ways. My prediction and then just going off a prediction on your end. Give me Washington. If Washington plays Alabama, give me Washington beating Alabama.
Ooh, okay.
45-38. I think it's going to be high scoring. I don't think it's going to be nearly as high scoring as Texas Washington will be. But it's going to be close. But I give Michael Penix a slight edge. Because like I said, I'm going based off of discipline. And I'm giving the discipline factor to Washington because they don't beat themselves up as much as Alabama does. And Alabama is currently one of the worst teams in the SEC in terms of penalty yardage per game. So if they hurt themselves in these games, Alabama's going to be fighting to come back from behind more often than not. So yeah, give me Washington in that matchup. But with my matchup, Texas-Michigan, I think it has potential to be a lower scoring matchup this time around. Because both Texas's defense Texas's defense is pretty solid. Michigan obviously has one of the top, if not the top scoring defense in all of the country right now. Give me Michigan 21-17 against Texas.
I like that. Man, I'm here for either game. Unfortunately, one of your predictions has two teams that I don't want to see either of them win a national championship, but
me neither.
It would be exciting, bro. Michigan versus Texas. It's going to be a lot more of a dogfight that's a lower scoring dogfight than you'd see the flip side. So either way, bro, it's going to be extremely exciting, and we will be obviously tuning in and talking more about it later in the season for sure.
Absolutely. Let's make a transition over to the Cotton Bowl Classic. Another very interesting game. Against it puts number 9 Missouri against number 7 Ohio State. Ohio State is losing their quarterback to the transfer portal. And Missouri is coming off of a very, very good season. A season in which they probably should have beat Georgia a little earlier in the year. But yeah, it's a very interesting game. And I'm going to go right off the bat here. I think Missouri gets it done against Ohio State. Give me Missouri winning 35-28 because I think the loss of Kyle McCord is going to be huge.
I agree. I definitely think it will be. I think I've got to give it to Ohio State for the sole purpose that I think they're going to be hungry, coming off of some decent, obviously missing the playoffs, obviously losing to Michigan. I truly feel like they're going to be playing for a lot. And Missouri is a great team. If this was a 12-team playoffs, I think Missouri would be a dark horse to shake stuff up out here. But I am going to have to give it to Ohio State. Give me Ohio State 28-24. I think it's going to be a really close game that stays close throughout the whole matchup. It's not going to be one team pulling ahead, but give me Ohio State by just a little bit.
I like that pick a lot. I can see this game going either way because obviously Ohio State has a lot of talent. They've got Marvin Harrison at running back. Travion Henderson at running back, Marvin Harrison at wide receiver. Marvin Harrison's obviously one of the top Heisman contenders this year. So it'll be an interesting game, interesting matchup because I think both teams will exploit each other a little bit. So it'd be interesting to watch that game on the 29th this month. Going to Ole Miss and Penn State and the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, another really solid matchup. You got 11 versus 10. What's your take on this one, man?
Man, I know that it's just a one ranking difference, but I don't think the distance could be any further. I think Penn State is the better team by far. And I think this is it's not going to be a blowout, but give me Penn State 38-20. I think Penn State is going to really show their dominance because that is a team that really flirted with being in that top area at the beginning of the season. This Penn State team looked like we were talking at one point, could Penn State be the Big Ten team that's in the playoffs? They did look like they could maybe be that team at one point. So give me Penn State taking care of business with ease, 38-20.
I've got Penn State as well, 38-24.
Okay, sweet. So we both have it being Penn State dominates. Unfortunately, they're a team that just does that.
Yeah, and looking at the spread right now, currently Penn State's a 3.5-point favorite. If I were to place a bet right now, I would place it on Penn State. I think Penn State's going to be the more physical team. They're going to deliver more body punches, and at the end of the day, I think Penn State will pull away late. It'll be a touchdown game until the fourth quarter, and I think Penn State will tack on one or two more touchdowns at the end to kind of pull away. Let's transition over to probably the most interesting bowl matchup of the bowl season in the Fiesta Bowl. We got the number 23, 13-0 Liberty against number 8 Oregon. This has the feeling of the Tulane USC matchup that we got last year in the Cotton Bowl. Gonna be interesting. I'm gonna go with the upset in this one. I'm going Liberty 38-35. Because as we have seen with bowl season, some funky things can really happen in this one. And I think Liberty is really good. And Liberty is another one of those teams. They're 13-0. If they beat number 8 Oregon, they might be another team to put up a national championship banner at the end of the year.
For real. No, yeah, they'd be one of the only undefeated teams left. So shout out to Liberty. Right when you said it was the most interesting matchup, you didn't have to say the name of the bowl game. I knew what you were talking about because this is crazy. I mean, as great as Liberty has played the whole season, who would have thought we'd see Liberty versus Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl? That is not a matchup that is super exciting out of the name, but Liberty is such an exciting team that you already know they're not going to get blown out. I don't want to drag Deion Sanders and Colorado under the bus, but I will take one more opportunity to do it. before the end of the college football season. It is not going to be an Oregon versus Colorado blow-up game where they don't have control of the game. Liberty is going to be in control, but with that being said, I still think Oregon is going to pull it off because of Bo Nix. No, I did not have a stroke this time. I'm saying Bo Nix, and we're at the right place right now. Right place, right time. No confusion here. I should have said the Washington quarterback instead, bro. I should have done that. I don't know why. What was I thinking? That would have been good. But no, Bo Nix, he's going to ball out because that dude, I don't think he's going to win the Heisman, but he's in that Heisman conversation. And so give me Oregon 42. Man, I think it's going to be 42-28. Give me Oregon. I know that's not a super close game score-wise, but that's still pretty close because of how good of a team Oregon is. Give me Oregon 42-28, but I like your pick of the upset, and I'm kind of pulling for that one, actually.
I'm pulling for a little Cinderella story. Like, you look at the players on both sides. Their quarterbacks are both really good. Salter for Liberty is 162 for 266. Hasn't taken nearly as many passing attempts because I think with Liberty, they go with more of a balanced attack. They run it as much as they throw it. So you look at Salter, 162 for 266, 2,750 yards, 31 touchdowns to just 5 picks. You go to Bo Nix, 336 of 435, 4,145 yards, 40 touchdowns to 3 picks. In running the ball, Liberty actually beats Oregon in this front. Liberty's running back, Cooley, 213 carries for 1,322 yards, 16 touchdowns. Irving for Oregon, 172 carries for 1,063 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think both of these teams will exploit one another. I think it's going to be a higher scoring affair. And, man, I'm really pulling for Liberty to pull this one off because, man, what a storybook. Storybook end of the season for Liberty. And I think it plays a big role going into next year because, hey, they could possibly be in the running for a 12-team playoff next year, especially if they can knock off Oregon because they may be starting off as a top 15 team going into the year, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But yeah, should be interesting to watch. Let's transition over to a little NBA talk. Why don't you take it away, man?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So obviously the in-season tournament, I don't remember what episode we talked about it at. It wasn't the last one. It was a couple episodes ago. We talked a little in-season tournament, really just talking about what our thoughts on it were. And now we have come to the end of it. We have the final game as we record this episode on Friday, December 8th. Tomorrow on December 9th, it is the in-season tournament final, which is my boys. I don't have any Lakers gear on, so I can't flash it right now, but my boys, the Lakers, versus the Indiana Pacers. A lot of people, I think, once the Lakers beat the Suns, could have guessed that the Lakers would be here. But the Pacers being here is turning a lot of heads. So my question to you, bro, is Lakers versus Pacers in-season tournament. Who do you have winning?
I've got the Pacers, man.
Oh,
and
bro.
it's really hard to pick against them. The way the Pacers are playing on the offensive side of the ball, especially, Tyrese Halliburton is arguably the best point guard outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the NBA. He had 27 points, 7 rebounds, 15 assists against the Bucks. He is putting up some really good numbers. He might actually win point guard of the year. Absolutely crazy. And then the Lakers, they're playing good basketball as of late. But when we're not talking the in-season tournament, they've been at times very lackluster. And I think you've seen that a little bit too. But they whooped up on the Pelicans, get right back on track to get to this point. I think it's going to be a good game. But give me the Pacers 132 to 120. I think it's going to be a
Oh,
higher
you're
scoring game.
made it even worse with a 12-point win, bro. Come on, man. Well, no. You know what? With how they played the Bucks, how could you not give them a prediction like that? Because they balled out, and arguably, yes, the Bucks are a little back and forth, a little choppy right now, but I do definitely think that they're a better team than the Lakers, top to bottom at the moment. And so the fact that the Pacers kind of went in there and exposed that team and showed up, the Bucks also did not play the greatest game, but the Pacers are balling out. And yes, it goes beyond. I mean, we've got Obi Top, and they've really beefed that lineup up, and they've beefed that team up, and that depth is there, and it seems like a team that has just kind of arrived. And so I understand the prediction, and I think it's a great prediction. I think that they look like a team that definitely could go in and beat the Lakers. For me, the Lakers have definitely had their lackluster games, like you alluded to. Unfortunately, as someone who tries to catch as many games as possible, I have seen several of those games live, and they have not been fun to watch. The Lakers are still one of the worst teams three-point shooting. We're getting better about getting back on defense. We were the slowest team getting back when we had Westbrook and Ariza, and just 2021 was a terrible season for the Lakers. But now that we have moved past those players and we have some younger players and our health is back, I'm seeing more consistency. Vanderbilt's back. Hachimura is back in the lineup. I believe the only player we are missing currently is Gabe Vincent, who has been out since the beginning of the season. So our depth is coming back, which we've seen in the win over the Suns and then the win over the Pelicans. Unfortunately, like you alluded to, we have been a little back and forth. And players like Anthony Davis are very hot and cold. Austin Reeves is hot and cold. A lot of our players, D'Angelo Russell, very hot and cold. So if those guys show up, if we play like we did against the Pelicans and the Suns, we absolutely will. If LeBron shows up like he has been, because LeBron has been going off. LeBron has been putting up masterclass performances and playing like it's playoff time these last couple of games. So just his presence matched up with hopefully Anthony Davis showing up, because again, the Pacers really don't have anyone that's going to be able to stop Anthony Davis. They do have some talented big men. They do have some pieces that will be able to get up and try to slow him down. But when we look at those matchups, I've got to give the matchup to AD. So just the fact that we have that matchup, and I think LeBron is going to show up and drop another 30-plus point game, I think we're going to win this one, but I think it's going to be close. Give me an overtime victory. Give me an overtime victory in a high-scoring game. Lakers end up winning 136-130 in OT.
That's a good pick. That's a really good pick. My prediction is just based off of like Tyrese Halliburton's ability to distribute the ball, and not only that, the dude can shoot the lights out of the ball too. He's really good. He is a game manager. And like you were alluding to, the Lakers have been one of those teams where they're either hot or they're really cold. And the Pacers, even in their losses, have been a pretty hot team. So that's why I'm giving the edge to the Pacers. I think the Pacers offense could be a little bit too much, especially if the Lakers get onto a little bit of a cold streak. Which I think is very possible, which is why I give the Pacers the 12-point edge. Because I do think the Pacers, it'll be close, and I think between the free throw line and potentially the Lakers getting really cold toward the end, that's why I have the Pacers pulling it off.
Unfortunately, I can see your prediction coming true, because the Lakers, if they're slow to start, if they don't show up, the Pacers will take advantage of that. And the one difference between the game that the Lakers just played against the Pelicans and the game they're going to play against the Pacers, the Pelicans were right with the Lakers for the first and second. And arguably the Pelicans had better moments. The Lakers were a little slow to start against the Pelicans. Yes, LeBron drained 3 threes in a row, and we were starting to heat up, but we didn't really pick it up and look like the team that was really dominating until the second half. And the Pacers will not let us stick around like that. If we do not take control of the game early on, they will take control of the game and continue that. So I like your pick. Time will tell. Either way, it's going to be an exciting game. But moving on, talking about a team that we just talked about briefly, Yes, the Bucks getting beat by the Pacers. The Bucks, of course, recent champs. Giannis, one of the best players in the league, MVP. Brook Lopez, one of the best defenders. But my question to you is this: after losing against the Pacers in the semis, they're currently second in the East at 15-7, but that loss did not look good.
No.
Are the Bucks legit, or do we need to maybe look at them as not being as legit as we might have thought before, especially with that Dame pickup? Everyone thought that was just going to skyrocket it. What are your thoughts, bro?
I think they're still a legit team because they're like you alluded to, they're second. They're one game out of the Celtics. But you look at their defense. Their defense is awful. They're allowing almost 119 points a game. They're averaging. They're on offense. They're really good. They're averaging 122. But their defense is one of the bottom defenses in the NBA at this point in the year. They're going to have to shore things up because I think they can turn from contender to pretender really quick, because they're going to go up against a lot of teams that have really good offenses that are going to score a lot of points because the Bucks can't get back on defense. They're allowing a lot of open looks, and we saw that against the Pacers, whether it be Halliburton or, a couple of their other key pieces. And like, it's kind of a tough thing to really think about, because they have such a good record, but that loss was kind of awful. And I'm not knocking the Pacers at all. The Pacers are obviously a really good team. I think the Pacers are arguably my sleeper team in the East this year. But yeah, it obviously doesn't help the Bucks. What do you think?
I don't think we can call them pretenders quite yet, but I definitely think they're on that downslide. And like you alluded to, I mean, Brook Lopez is one of the best defensive players in the league, but as a team, their defense has fallen. And they traded they traded not a lot, but they traded enough of their depth to get Dame that I think we're seeing that. I think the biggest thing that this Bucks team needs to do is add depth. And I think that we're seeing a lot of teams that have major holes. And like last year, it was the Lakers. I don't want to turn it back to the Lakers, but I'm going to briefly just to make a point. And that's, yes, the Lakers are inconsistent this year, but I don't see a lot of holes on their team position-wise. When that team shows up, top to bottom, they're covering every position. You cannot say the same as the Bucks. You cannot say the same for the Bucks. And even if Dame throws up a 30-point night and Giannis throws up a big night, if you do not have your role players showing up, which they've got some solid role players on that team and some solid pieces on that Bucks team, I just think they need to strengthen it a little bit more, specifically on the defensive end. So I do think we're going to see the Bucks being one team that is looking into the free agent market, that is looking into maybe some trades. I don't think we'll see them dip their toe too deep into the water of the trade market, especially since they just did to get Dame, but I do think we're going to look at them looking into options on how can we strengthen our team, who can we add specifically defensively, because you cannot be scoring like you can't have a player like Dame who can score like he can, or even Giannis who can score like he can. You can't have players like that losing games like they're losing. Specifically, if you want to look at the best example of this, look at their last loss against the Pacers. That is the perfect example. Like you said, they're not getting back quick enough. The Pacers had way too many open looks, and there was just lackluster defense as a whole. It just felt like the Pacers could make anything they wanted, and I feel like we've seen that against several different teams that they've picked up L's against this season. So I don't think they're pretenders yet, but I think they're dangerously on the track of being called that for sure.
Yeah, it's still a little too early in the season for them to be considered pretenders. But if they don't get the depth that they need, and if they don't shore up that defense, they will turn into a pretender probably within the next month or two, as we get a little later. They're going to need to do a whole lot because, the Pacers were making literally anything that they wanted, from the mid-range to three-point shooting. Like, they were on fire. and I'm not knocking the Pacers. The Pacers are obviously a very, very talented team, but the Bucks have been notoriously a top-end East team all this time. And yes, their record shows that they're still a top-end East team, but how long is that going to last? That's the huge question. So yeah, it's just very tough to talk about, man.
Yeah, no, time will definitely tell because it's again, like it's too early. We can't really make a call quite yet, but it is you're taking notice of those holes. They're very noticeable. And unfortunately for the Bucks, even before this season, they have had holes and that they got beat by your boys. Shout out to the Heat. Let's give a shout out to the Heat. We haven't shouted the Heat out at all this episode. Shout out to your boys for beating them in round 1 of the playoffs last season. That's where I'm not going to say they got exposed, but the Heat definitely showed that they needed to change a couple of things. And then they tried to make those changes by getting Dame, but arguably they gave up a little bit too much, in my personal opinion, depth-wise, especially defensive-wise. So for me, are the Bucks pretenders? No. Could they be? Yes. Will they be? I highly doubt it. I think they'll stick between 1, 2, and 3 the whole season. I don't think they'll fall below that spot, but they've got to figure it out if they want to be a team that will actually make a push when it comes time to the playoffs, because the regular season and the playoffs, two completely different things, because your boys proved that last season. Same with my boys. We were 2 bottom tier teams that ended up making it all the way. Close. You guys made it all the way. We were close.
Yeah, we were close. I wish the Heat would have pulled it off last year. And
that was I feel like that was their best, not their best bet, but like that, I feel like they really could have pulled that one off.
I think so too, because all the games for the most part were very competitive. So if one or two things went their way, I think it would have been the Heat winning, not the Denver Nuggets. But that's a story for another day. Another interesting topic in the NBA. It's time for our way too early predictions for awards. Why don't you take it away, man?
Yeah, man. So like you said, way too early, but you can never be way too early because there's definitely players that are out there doing it. But it's early. My picks might seem a little premature, but we'll go into them. So my pick for way too early MVP currently, no, it is not Jokic, and that is not because I'm still mad that he beat my Lakers in the playoffs. My current MVP is Luka, and what I will say is this: that is me thinking about Luka last year was an MVP candidate in the top 3 the whole season. The only problem was, for the majority of the season, the Mavs were not a top tier team. They were not a team that was winning games. And then towards the end, when Luka really fell out of MVP talk, was when they fell out of the playoffs and when they started losing the remainder of their games. So Luka was putting the stats up. His team was not winning the games to correlate with that. So I think that because the Mavs look so much better this season, and I still think they'll continue that and look even better after All-Star break, I think that Luka's going to win his first MVP. Jokic is playing great. Giannis is playing pretty decent. Halliburton's playing great. SGA. We have a lot of players we could say, but I got to go with Luka. I think in the end, I think he'll win it.
I'll have to agree with your MVP pick. I've got Luka as well. You just look at his stat line: 31.8 points a game. He's shooting at a almost 50% clip. Almost 40% from 3. He's averaging 8.5 rebounds, 8.6 assists a game, 1.3 steals, and half a block a game. That's an MVP stat line.
He does it all.
It's crazy. Super good player. It's unfortunate that the Mavericks haven't exactly been great around him, but he's showing out. The Mavericks are a team that need to start developing depth around him, because I think the Mavericks, with him and maybe 2 or 3 other key pieces, they'll be a very, very dangerous team. So, yeah, I agree with your MVP pick 100%.
Like you said, though, his team has to win around him. It cannot just be Luka, and that's been the problem. Moving over to Defensive Player of the Year, I don't want to be a homer, but if this dude stays healthy, Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is currently averaging 2.7 blocks per game and 1 steal per game. And he has had he's had some insane games where he's put up 4+ blocks. And he has been responsible for some extremely important stops defensively. So as long as he stays healthy, which who knows if that's going to help happen, but as long as that dude stays healthy, I think that Anthony Davis, because I think that dude could end up averaging over 3 blocks a game towards the end of the season. I think he's at 2.7 right now.
Yeah.
If his motor can stay hot enough and he can avoid injuries, I think he'll get up to like a 3.23. I think he'll get up there with his blocks. I don't think we've seen the top of what his blocks numbers are going to be yet. So give me AD if he stays healthy.
Not too often we continue to agree. Anthony Davis is my defensive player of the year so far. Like you were alluding to, he's averaging 2.7 blocks a game, 1 steal. And let's not knock his rebounding. He's averaging almost 13 rebounds a game. So, again, really good stat lines. I can definitely see him crest the 3 block mark, especially if he stays healthy. But that's the key. Will he stay healthy? Because he's been one of those pieces for the Lakers that it seems like in unfortunate times he gets hurt. It's hard to keep him on the floor. So if he stays healthy, I think he very well can win the Defensive Player of the Year.
Absolutely. That's the biggest key for him and for the entire team is his health. So time will tell. Looking at Rookie of the Year, this is a tricky one because obviously people have their idea of who they think it's going to be just because of all the hype built up. But I've got it being Chet Holmgren because that dude, now I'm not a huge fan of the fact that I don't love when you miss your first year and then you play and then you're considered a rookie. Embiid did that as well, but Embiid missed even more time than Chet has missed and was still considered a rookie. So I'm not a big fan of that. But here's the deal. When we talk about a player that is not only putting up huge numbers as a rookie, but also winning games, it's Chet.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about that dude in San Antonio, yes, he's fantastic and he is an insane skill set who is currently averaging a little bit more statistically than Chet. They're on I don't know how many games they've lost, but they've lost 12 or 13. The Spurs have lost over 10 games in a row. And I am sorry, but a player, yes, we've seen Rookie of the Year be awarded to a player that's on a not great team, but I don't think the Spurs are even they might not even barely break 20 wins this season. And so if that is the case, there is no way they're giving that to a player on a team that's not even breaking 20 wins when there's a player in OKC who is putting up insane stats and he's going to be a playoff player. So for me, it's got to be Chet is my Rookie of the Year.
We continue to agree. Chet Holmgren is my Rookie of the Year candidate to win it. His regular season stats have been incredible. He's averaging almost 17 points a game. He's shooting at a 52% clip. He's shooting at an almost 38% clip from 3, averaging 7.8 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 0.9 steals, and 2.4 blocks a game. Really good stat line, really good player. And we've seen the level of play from OKC really step up with some of these new talented pieces that they've picked up. But yeah, I'm going to have to give it to Chet Holmgren at this point.
He's playing phenomenal ball. And also shout out to OKC because they're one of the top teams in the West right now. And who knew they'd make that jump, but they definitely have. Looking at most improved player of the year, it's got to be Tyrese Maxey. That dude Maxey is just putting up insane stats. And I mean, shout out to Embiid. Embiid is a fantastic, phenomenal player. But if we're talking about a difference maker since James Harden has left for that 76ers team that is helping them win games and remain a top East team, it's Maxey. So my most improved player of the year has to be Maxey, who hooped out last year, balled out, but he's just on a whole nother level this year. And I think a big part of that is the subtraction of Harden to that team.
Tyrese Maxey is mine too.
We're hitting all them on the head. Let's go.
Yeah, we got them all on the head. Great minds think alike. That's what everybody says.
Facts.
So, Tyrese Maxey is playing at a very, very high level right now, especially after James Harden left. I think James Harden leaving opened up the opportunity for him to kind of show out a little bit, show what he is capable of, because it seemed like when James Harden was there, James Harden was a ball hawk. He wanted to take all the shots, make all the plays. But you're seeing the opposite here with Maxey. He's averaging 27 points a game. He's shooting at a 46.6% clip, 39.4 3-point, 4.4 rebounds, 6.7 assists a game, 0.8 steals, 0.6 blocks. Like, he can really do it all. And you're kind of seeing it. So, yeah, Maxey is definitely my comeback player of the year.
But he's playing phenomenal. When we talk about final one we're going to look at is sixth man. And again, I kind of do feel like a homer this episode because I'm talking about my boys quite a bit, but I've got to give it to Austin Reeves. Now, Austin Reeves, at the beginning of the season, it was predicted he'd be a starter, but he has started a couple games because of injuries when Reddish, a couple players have been out. But currently, Austin Reeves has been hitting most of his time off of the bench. And actually, I think that Austin Reeves is his best when he's off of the bench. That is not because he is not a player that can hoop when he has starting minutes. And he actually does usually reach pretty close to starting minutes, even off of the bench. But Austin Reeves just leads that second unit so well, and they use him when they need him. He has hit some huge shots in their last couple of games and has really came up. And he is averaging career highs currently predominantly off of the bench. If he continues to play off of the bench, like I think he probably will throughout the season, I think Austin Reeves is going to win that Sixth Man of the Year award.
I like that pick, but I'm going actually slightly different here. I'm going to go with Tim Hardaway Jr.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, that was my second one. We almost got all of them matched because that was my second pick because he is hooping.
Yeah, Tim Hardaway Jr. is really, really hooping right now, averaging 16.8 points a game, 41.6% from the field, 38 from the 3-point, 3.4 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 0.2 steals, no blocks. He's showing out. He really is. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Hardaway. It was between Hardaway and Reeves for me.
Same. I ended up picking Reeves. Maybe it's because I'm a Lakers guy. Maybe I was going for the Laker, but I definitely think between those two guys, if they both, which Hardaway will definitely remain on the bench for the season and as a sixth man. Reeves is the only one that's kind of interesting because I don't know exactly what will happen throughout the season with him. But between those two dudes, if they stay sixth men, one of them is going to walk away with it for sure.
Absolutely. Should be interesting to follow where all these players end up in the award things as the season goes on. Let's transition over to another thing in the NBA. It's a big question. Are teams like the Warriors, Clippers, and Raptors successful teams on a downward slide? And then do teams like the Thunder, the Wolves, the Magic have new life? Like, are they the teams to kind of take the reins from the likes of the Warriors, Clippers, and Raptors? What are your thoughts?
I think we absolutely are seeing a team like the Warriors that are starting to be more on that downward. Especially, I'm going to specifically talk about the Warriors because I think that's a team where we're seeing those key players age. We're seeing maybe that the players they've picked up not working out as well. I think a team like the Warriors, they're a dynasty, but I definitely think they're a team that's on the downward. And then a team that's on the upward is a team that's on the exact opposite of the spectrum. The Thunder are a team that is extremely young. They do not have a quote unquote full on vet on their team, in my personal opinion. That is an extremely young team. The teams that are younger and that have been building are the teams that you see on top, like the Thunder, like the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, I am one of the people who flamed them for picking up Gobert and hitting that trade. But right now, actually, it's looking like it really paid off. And so we're seeing teams that either A, made some huge offseason moves, or B, have picked up some of that youth and are picking up those players organically. Those are the teams on the rise. A team like the Warriors that have been on top, or the Raptors that had that one chip in 2019 and then have been a playoff team at least. They're on the downward now. I think it's just like the swinging of the pendulum. We're just seeing different teams that have built up the right way, kind of building their way and working their way up top. And the best example of that is definitely the best example of it being players and organic is the Magic and the Thunder. Those are two teams that are being built with picks, being built within. Those are teams that are being built up with youth. And so those are two teams that are great examples of it's truly just how they're being built up from those head guys and those GMs when it comes to the draft, when it comes to trades. And then when we talk about a team like the Timberwolves, they're a team that made a lot of people would say a kind of a risky move, and it paid off in getting players like Gobert, trading around pieces. So it's just there are some teams that are figuring out, and there are some teams that are not. And currently, for me, a team like the Raptors, a team like the Warriors, those are the two top ones. I'll even throw a team like the Clippers in. How about the Clippers? They're a team that's kind of starting to look like they're slipping a little bit. So for me, it's just some teams are making the right moves, and other teams are not.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think teams like the Timberwolves, making the risky moves that are seemingly paying off right now, like picking up Gobert. You got Oklahoma City Thunder, who are building from draft picks and building within, and they're one of the younger teams in the NBA right now. And you see some of these teams that are younger, they're the teams that you're going to see up at the top. Because, it's just kind of a funny thing to watch. You got the Orlando Magic, same thing. They are building from within. They're sitting third seed in the East. But now you look at the Raptors, they're a team that was perennially up top of the East pretty consistently. And now they're nowhere to be found. They're in the 11th seed right now if the playoffs were to start, which would leave them on the outside looking in. You look at the Golden State Warriors, who have kind of slid down the list a little bit. They're not even in the playoffs at this point in the year. They're sitting in the 11th seed, right behind the Houston Rockets. So it's kind of cool to see some of these younger teams, they've been building this thing up for, the last, handful of years or so. And everything is starting to pay off. Like you could see, arguably, you can see teams like Minnesota and Oklahoma City, even Orlando, make it far in the playoffs at the end of the season because of the way they're built. And that's to the testament of their GM, their coaches, their development staffs. They're doing a really good job. They're doing a really good job with their situations because Orlando obviously wasn't always a good team. They were really bad last year, and now they're sitting at the number 3 seed at this point in the season. And then Golden State, they need to find a way to trade some of their pieces. I know they don't want to, but they're a team that needs to go a little younger as well. I think Curry may sound like a hot take. I think Steph Curry is going to find himself in another spot. I think he's a potential trade piece. Maybe not this season, but maybe next season. So, yeah, I can definitely see moves where teams that were consistently at the top this last decade that are currently not, I think they're going to try and find a way to trade their key pieces so they can get a little younger and develop from within again to maybe build up for another future run.
No, absolutely. There's definitely hope for these teams. They just have to make those moves. And a team like the Warriors definitely does not want to make those moves. I definitely agree they'll move on from players. Like you said, a player with the pull of Curry probably won't move on. They won't move on from quite yet, but they'll definitely monitor the situation. And if that seems like the best move, I can definitely see that too. And boy, would that shake the NBA up to see Curry in another uniform. That might be the biggest team swap since LeBron went to the Lakers, potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously he's one of the key pieces for the Warriors. And then going to Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson's another piece on that Warriors team that I can see getting shipped around too.
I think he is. I think he could yet this year. I think Klay Thompson could sooner than later. I really think that Klay Thompson is going to it will move on from without a doubt. I don't think they'll hold on to him.
And then what about Looney? Do you think he sticks with the Warriors?
I don't know if Looney does. I don't know if Wiggins does. There's so many players that they could / maybe should. I think my thinking right now is this. I think what they should do is I think they should trade Looney and trade Klay Thompson for like a Pascal Siakam or a player like that. They've been tied to they need a player. They need a forward or a center that can really be dominant because they do not have that right now. So I think that they need to trade for a big man, and I think that they need to trade a player like Wiggins, and maybe you throw in a Klay Thompson. And I think they need to do that yet this season. But will they pull the trigger on that? Probably not, because they love them some Klay Thompson.
Absolutely. They love them some Klay Thompson and Steph Curry.
Yeah, and Draymond Green as well. They love
they love him even though he's been suspended like 20 million times.
Yeah, pretty much. That's one of his stats. They should add that to his ESPN stat line as many times as he's been suspended, because it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow up on the NBA as the season goes on. There's going to be a lot more interesting storylines that we will touch on and talk about in future episodes. Let's transition over to some Husker Sports. This is our last segment of the episode. It's the Husker football offseason now. The big question is, what do we need to do in the offseason in order to become a very successful or even just a bowl team next year? I think the biggest pickup that they could get would be a quarterback. And there are rummagings right now of Nebraska picking up Kyle McCord from Ohio State. Apparently, Kyle McCord followed a bunch of Nebraska football players on his social media. Don't know if it says a whole lot, but I mean, Klay Thompson did the same thing when he first transferred here from Texas. I think it's very possible Nebraska picks up Kyle McCord just based off of one, building that relationship. I think this staff does a really good job of building relationships with players coming in. And Nebraska just needs a piece that is not a run-first quarterback that can throw the ball downfield. And Kyle McCord really did that for Ohio State this year, especially as the season went on. And McCord is a quarterback that still has some eligibility left. He's still got a couple of years of eligibility. So if Nebraska picks him up and they utilize him and he has a really good year next year and he sticks around, Nebraska has a key quarterback in this recruiting class already in Daniel Kalen from Bellevue West. If Kalen develops, that's going to do good for this quarterback room, because you're not going to necessarily have to go into the portal for a quarterback. You're developing from within, and that's what the staff wants to do. They want a guy to come in that can make this team successful while developing the guys behind him, not having to worry about anything. You can maybe keep a red shirt on Daniel Kalen, and that gives him an extra year or so of eligibility to do what he wants to do. I also think maybe adding a couple of wide receivers. If they add a couple of wide receivers, maybe a running back, I think that can do a lot of good for this team as well. Defense, maybe getting a couple of back-end players too for depth wouldn't be a bad thing. So they can do a few things, and I think they're in a pretty good spot, especially if they can pick up Kyle McCord. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think, does it have to be Kyle McCord? No, it doesn't have to be him, but I think getting players to come to us through the transfer portal / also, like we've talked about both on the pod and off the pod, we have a really nice, Nebraska has a really nice football class. We have a really nice class coming up. So, I mean, there's a really good setup. We have a really good situation. And I feel like I'm not going to use this as a chance to just diss on Scott Frost, but I just feel like our current coach is just a way, way, way better person that just I think he excites people. He gets people bought. He's a really big person with the buy-in. He's a big program builder. He really is good with that buy-in and getting people to buy into what he's doing. So I think we're going to see that make the difference. I think that Rule is going to be the big difference for us in this offseason, specifically with his recruiting. And I would not be shocked if we get some top end people that at least look at us and at least have us in their list. And I know there's a couple of names being floated around already that where Nebraska is at least a rumor. And that's because of Rule. That's the Rule effect. Yes, we didn't make a bowl game. Yes, we didn't win the Big Ten championship or even make it. But Matt Rule did more, in my personal opinion, for the Nebraska Cornhuskers in his first season than Scott Frost did in any of his years. And that's not record-wise. That's everything else. That's not the record that I'm looking at. It's everything else. So for me, the biggest thing this offseason is going to be, yes, you want to cultivate what you already have. And we have a lot of returning players that are going to make a huge difference for us next season. But you definitely want to look, because there are a lot of players entering that portal. And money talks with that NIL. So a lot of it is having to do with that or whatever else. But I do think the Huskers are going to be kind of a spot that a lot of people look at. So I think the biggest thing is going to be how we do in the offseason with our recruiting and with how we do with the transfer portal. But I would not be shocked if we get a couple players that transfer to Nebraska.
I wouldn't be shocked either. Listening to the 1620 The Zone guys all this week, and they're talking about how many people or how many players is Nebraska going to pick up through the portal. I don't think the portal class is going to be overly huge. I think it may be 4 or 5 players from the portal. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. You don't need to necessarily build your entire team off of portal players. You also want to develop the high school talent from within. So getting 5 key guys that can come in and make an instant impact, I think is going to be huge. Especially when, we alluded to it, earlier in the episode, we're going to a 12-team playoff next year. And Nebraska obviously giving the pay raise to Tony White, the defensive coordinator, who coached this Nebraska defense to their best stat season since 2009, 2010. They were the 14th ranked total defense in the country. It's their best defensive stat line since they joined the Big Ten. And they look to be getting even better this next year. They could be a potential top 10 defense going into next year. So if they can find a couple of key pieces on offense to even make them a halfway average offense, 30, 35 points a game, you're cooking with peanut oil, because you've got a really good defense that can give you a lot of stops. But if you can go and capitalize on, say, good field position, you don't turn the ball over, you're going to be in position to win a lot of games. And in one of our last episodes, I pegged Nebraska being 7-0 going up against Ohio State and Columbus, which, if they're firing on all cylinders, they stay healthy, their defense still shows up, their offense still puts up points, and say, God forbid, Nebraska has Kyle McCord and they're 7-0, you know how big that matchup is against Ohio State in Week 8? Like, that's going to be huge, because Kyle McCord was the quarterback of Ohio State. But yeah, it'll be huge for a lot of different reasons. I'm excited to see what this coaching staff can do, because it seems like they are more active in pursuing players than, say, Frost or, dare I say it, Mike Riley or even Bo Pelini at times. So they're doing all the right things. It's going to be an interesting offseason. We'll talk more Husker football as we get into, winter conditioning, spring practice, and stuff like that, because that's all coming up really quick. So we'll keep tabs on all that. The biggest sport in Nebraska right now, though, is volleyball. And Nebraska volleyball is in the Elite Eight against Arkansas in the regional final. And they came off of a sweep against Georgia Tech, and they absolutely dominated Georgia Tech in a pretty big manner. You look at some of the stats. Merritt Beeson had 11 kills for Nebraska. She looked really good. Allie Batenhorst had 10 kills. This Nebraska team, while young, has what it takes to win everything this year. And now things get a little bit tougher. They are playing Arkansas. But I think Nebraska will take care of business against Arkansas for sure. I think Nebraska will win against Arkansas in 4 sets. What are your takes on this volleyball team, man? Because it's exciting to see such a young team make a very impressive run this season. They're sitting at 31-1. And they don't have anybody graduating this year, which is crazy. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm with you on your prediction for the game. I think they're going to go all the way. I think, will they win it all? I believe so, but will they win it all? It's not guaranteed. It's never guaranteed. But I definitely think I could almost confidently say I can guarantee they'll make it all the way to that championship game, because this Nebraska team is special, and they have been consistently one of the best volleyball teams, not just in the Big Ten, in all of volleyball. Again, I'll say the word consistently again, because it's been consistent for the last, I mean, you could even go back. They have been at least a team that is winning games and making it at least somewhere year in and year out for 10, 15, 20. I mean, they've been a team that's active. They're right there. But within the last 5 years, we've really seen them stay consistently at the top. And now I think they look like the best they've looked. And like you said, they're not losing anybody. So they're only going to continue to look better and better. And I think we're going to look at the next NCAA volleyball champions, and I think it's the Huskers. I definitely think that's who it's going to be, and I think they'll take care of business against Arkansas on Saturday in 4 sets, and then they'll continue on. Do you know who they'll be playing next? Once they
Let me pull up the
up
bracket
earlier, but I lost it.
Let me pull up the bracket real quick. So I believe they would play either Wisconsin or Oregon.
Man, talk about Wisconsin versus Nebraska rematch. Do you think Nebraska can figure it? Because we beat them early in the season, right? And then
we lost.
So we're 1-1 on it for the season for them on the year.
I think Nebraska has what it takes, because they are playing at an unreal level right now through this tournament so far, and I think it'll continue against Arkansas on Saturday. I'm really hoping Oregon beats Wisconsin. I hope they do, because I think that'll give Nebraska maybe a little bit of a better matchup to make it. But again, it's going to be interesting to watch, because Wisconsin, obviously, I'm not knocking them. They are a very good volleyball team. But I do think Nebraska, if they were to play Wisconsin again, it's going to be one of those matchups where it may break a record for one of the most watched volleyball games ever. So yeah, I'm kind of, going the Matt Rule way. I'm just like, take it one game at a time. Take care of Arkansas on Saturday, and we'll see how the ball rolls from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the best way to look at it. I think taking it one game at a time is the best way to do that. And I think that this volleyball team is battle tested, and whether we play Oregon or Wisconsin, I definitely think we could figure it out with either, but I like Oregon a lot more. That's a better matchup for the Huskers. So hopefully it ends up being Oregon and Nebraska in that next round. But if it is Nebraska, Wisconsin, we're ready for it. We're battle tested. We'll be ready to go. A win over Arkansas, because Arkansas, back to the game coming up, Arkansas is going to give us a game. Arkansas is a solid team. Arkansas is going to, honestly, us playing against Arkansas might be one of the best situations for us before going up against Wisconsin again. If we do have to go up against Wisconsin again, the fact that I do think a team such as Arkansas is our next opponent is a good thing. So I think no matter who we play in the next round, Wisconsin or Oregon, I think we'll take care of business. But either way, shout out to Nebraska volleyball, making Nebraska sports continue to look good.
Absolutely. Let's transition over to our last topic today, and it's Nebraska men's volleyball or basketball, excuse me. I about had a stroke.
We're announcing a new sport today on the podcast. First people to announce it to the world. Hey, some colleges do have that for real, bro.
Hey, they do. They do. They do.
So,
They do. Nebraska men's basketball, and I'm going to talk Nebraska Creighton first. Obviously, that was a rough game. Creighton's a very good team. They're a top 10 team for a reason. But last game, they played Minnesota. They went at the end of the first half up 14 points. They were up 39 to like 25. And Nebraska men's basketball in the second half didn't show up. They got outscored 52 to 26 in the second half. Big question is, do you think Nebraska basketball is going to figure it out? I think they do. They're sitting at 7-2. It's not like they're a bad team. But do you think they're going to be able to bounce back, say, against the likes of Michigan State, who happens to be unranked right now at 4-4, and then they play Kansas State on the 17th? What do you think?
So here's the thing. Is it too late for the Huskers to turn it around? Absolutely not. I think the Creighton loss was bad, but the Minnesota loss was worse. My personal opinion, as much as the Creighton loss hurt, you're playing against ranked tournament-bred Creighton. Playing against Minnesota for me was a little bit different, and losing against Minnesota hurt a little bit more. But I think the fact that we have Michigan State Sunday, December 10th, and then Kansas State a week later, those are two bounce back games. Oh, and then guess what else? North Dakota?
They can be 10-2.
Come on, yeah. I don't think we are anywhere close to being able to be talked about out.
And then they have South Carolina State right after North Dakota. So there's potential for at least 3 wins, maybe 4. If they can show up.
I think they win them all. I think that they show up because I don't think this is a team that is going to collapse. If a team like last year, had they shown up and started out hot and lost a game, collapse, this is a team that is ready to go. We are seeing a way different Husker basketball team than we have seen, not just last year, but the last couple of years. So for me, I think they're going to win out. They're going to beat Michigan State. They're going to beat Kansas State and then North Dakota. And then I think they're going to win their next 4. Give me them winning their next 4. I really think they're going to. So that is going to be a huge boost because then we're talking about games like Wisconsin and Purdue and bigger
Indiana.
And Indiana. We're talking about the big ones. So talking about those games, I mean, let's look at them, bro. What do you think when we're talking about that gauntlet of Indiana, Wisconsin, and Purdue? What do you have us going in those 3 games?
I have us going 1-2. I think Nebraska can beat Indiana, but I don't know if they'll beat Wisconsin and Purdue. Especially if they play the way that they did against Minnesota in that second half. I don't think they will. I think Hoiberg's going to have this team ready to play, so those games will be competitive. But they're going to need to change what they did in that second half against Minnesota, especially going up against Michigan State on Sunday. And then you've got, Kansas State a week later. So they're going to need to bounce back quick if they want to stand any sort of chance in those games.
Agreed. And I'm with you. Unfortunately, 1-2. Indiana is the only one that I can confidently say right now that they can get. Maybe we'll talk with you guys again and before that game and we'll be feeling differently. But right now, I don't feel confident that they'll pull off more than 1-2. But I can see them maybe beating Wisconsin. I can see if there's one game out of Purdue and Wisconsin, I think it's going to be Wisconsin because Purdue is just a step above most other basketball programs.
And that Wisconsin game is kind of at a weird time too. It's at 1:15 p.m. tip. So it's kind of along the lines of, an 11 a.m. kickoff for college football.
Yeah.
Which team woke up better in the morning? So we'll see. They could go 2-1 in those 3, but like I said, they got to bounce back from that Minnesota loss extremely quick. But I think this team will be fine in the long run. We'll definitely have to see. I do think this team has potential to be a tourney team, maybe even just a bubble team. But even if they're a bubble team, they're probably in line for the NIT at least. So time will tell with them. But yeah, man, do you have any finishing thoughts on the episode?
Yeah, as always, guys, check us out every single episode, every single week. We have been planning on going live for a couple of shows. We're still figuring it out, but our goal is to be live. We'd love to have you guys in the chat live talking to us because that'd just be a lot of fun. That's always fun. So stay tuned for some live announcements of when we'll be doing our first live show. Always check us out as well. Just on here, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. We might be hitting up a couple other platforms as well. We were on Rumble, trying to get back out on there. Also, hit up Yankee and the Brit. If you are watching us on Yankee and the Brit, head on over to our channel. Give us a watch. Give us a subscription. If you're watching us on their channel, hit them with a subscription. Check out their other shows. I have another show on that channel called Well Beyond the Arc. It is an NBA show. We will be back on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. Check us out. It should be fun. But that's all I got. This has been awesome, bro. As always, talking sports for a little bit is always a good time. Having a couple of strokes apparently along with it. You already know, bro. You already know when it's a successful show when you can survive a couple of in-show strokes.
Hey, we bounced back pretty good.
Hey,
So,
you already know.
Yep, absolutely. As always, we both sincerely appreciate you all for listening. If you have any questions or anything you would like us to talk about in our next episode, hit us up on our Facebook, hit us up in the comments on our YouTube channel. We'll try and get through them all. But as always, appreciate you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next time.